Hey y'all, it's me. Today's Memorial Day and I'm up at the cemetery waiting on one of Jared's buddies. He's in a bike club, and every Memorial Day they drive to the different graveyards in the county where each of them have a buddy or family member who had specifically passed the way that Jared did. And I always come up and wait on them, because I just think that if those precious ones will take the time to do this for us, for their buddies, I want to just let them know how much they're appreciated. I forgot my selfie stick because I wasn't really planning on taping this, but I got up here and it is such an absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous day. I thought I'm just gonna chat with my friends while I'm waiting on John and his buddies to come. You can probably hear in my voice of just a bit of sadness. And I know that those mamas and daddies out there that I'm talking to right now who have lost a child understand that there's just certain days that make it a little bit harder. Birthdays, Christmas, if they were in the military, special days like this. But I know that the military guys sometimes see all of this just a little bit different than those of us who are our mamas do, and that's okay. Everybody needs to just experience their journey as they experience their journey. So anyway, girls, walk with me. Let's chat a little bit. Excuse me. I'm not exactly certain what time John and his buddies will be here, because I'm not sure of the order that they go to the cemeteries, and sometimes I'm up here for quite a while, but that's okay. What a quiet and beautiful way to spend a May day. And I just want to talk with y'all. Look at the gravestones. Aren't they gorgeous? This is the older part of the cemetery. I think I've talked to y'all about this before, and I know that Hugh and Aaron are planning on making a time to come up here and just visiting these graves and talking about the family history that's here. And nobody really, I don't know if they have even a decoration day up here. That's something that I have never asked about. But anyway, I do know that at Christmas time, there's a wreath laying, that they lay wreaths on all the veterans' graves. And then over in the newer part of the cemetery, you can see all the flowers. Bless. And yes, I put flowers on last week, changed the spring flowers over to summer roses. But personally, I just think this is prettier without all the flowers. That's just me. And let me tell you something I'm thinking about doing. Okay. I love carving. And now that I'm thinking, my hands are feeling a little bit better. My hands seem to not be aching as badly since I've been earthing. And speaking of which, I'm over in the grass and I've got on my earthing shoes instead of walking on the pathway. And also I'm still taking the iodine and plan on doing that from now on. I think that my hands, well, I know that my hands aren't hurting as badly. And even when I hoe or do something that typically kind of sets them on fire for that evening, they've not been hurting. And I mean, I'm not saying that all the paint is gone. There's still some there, but it's so much better that, once again, I'm going to encourage y'all to look into those two things, earthing and the iodine. But to get back to, the other thing, I love carving, and it occurred to me that what I would love to have on the grave marker itself, the big one that just says best, is something specific to the lives of those that are memorialized there. And I'm thinking that I'm going to carve a great big banjo and a great big guitar to put on one side, and in place of one of the flower urns. The other flower urn I may leave because my mother-in-law and sister-in-law loved flowers, or I may carve some flowers and maybe some kind of a quilt laying underneath the flowers. I'm not sure how I'll do that exactly. I've got something in my mind, and I'm breathy today, girls, so you just have to try to ignore the breathiness. But once I do that, Aaron said that he can epoxy them really heavy so that they will withstand weather for many, many, many years to come. And I'm thinking that that's what I'd like to do in place of the flower urns, because I'm not a fan of the artificial flowers. I've told y'all that before. And I forget to change the flowers, then I feel guilty. And we've already told our children that when we are gone, Hugh and I, that we don't expect them to change flowers out on the graves, because we won't be there. And the changing of the flowers doesn't, in my mind, help us to remember someone, because they're always on our mind. It's just, it's tradition. So many things are tradition. And if those traditions bring comfort to someone, and they did for my mother and daddy, and Hugh's mother, I don't know about Hugh's daddy, he never really said much about it, but that was good. So for their generation, putting flowers on the graves was something that they did that brought comfort and just helped them to feel like they were showing respect to the people that had passed, their parents. And so it's, everything in life is a journey. And for Hugh and I, since we're the last two that will tend to these graves, unless our children, like I said, we've told our children that's something they're not to do unless it is absolutely important to them. I would like to just make it easier and just put those carvings on. Let me take it down and show you what I'm thinking. It's a little strange, yes, I know, but you've got to remember I'm an old hippie, so my ideas aren't necessarily traditional. A little bit odd. All right. And y'all can see that Aaron came up yesterday. This is something that a lot of military men, it's traditional to leave a beer or something on the headstone. And I know that there's a lot of people that would think that was disrespectful. But I know where their heart's at, and I understand why they do that and their thinking. So, in no way do I think it's disrespectful. Okay, so these urns. My thinking is that on this side, and this is the side where my mother-in-law, Louise, let me see if my screen is so kind of muddy right now. It's got yuck on it. And my sister-in-law, Alpha, both of them loved flowers and loved quilting. So I'm thinking that if I do like a quilt that would start up here and just kind of drape down and just over the edge just a little bit, and maybe a couple of roses or something laying on top of it. It'll all be one piece of wood, obviously. And then over here, this is the side where my father-in-law and Jared are right now. Well, obviously they're not going to be moved, but that sounded strange, didn't it? Let's see if I can get that flag to drape just a little better. I have a banjo and somehow a guitar. Well, there's plenty of space down there, but a banjo and a guitar leaning against the headstone. And both of them would be heavily epoxied so that they'll be safe from the wind. And they'll be glued to the stone, or safe from the rain and just the weather. And they'll be glued to the stone so they can't be blown away by the wind. And actually, may even drill down into the base right there a little bit and put a piece of metal dowel rod down in there and drill up into the base of the carvings so that the carvings can be extra snug and secure from wind. But I personally just think that would be meaningful. More meaningful, I think, to my family at least, than the flowers. It would say something specifically about these precious people that are laying here. But anyway, that will be probably a year or two down the road before I can do that, because there's so much on our plate right now. But what do you guys think? I don't feel at all that it would be disrespectful, because there's nothing sacred to me about an urn on a headstone. But anyway, so let's chat about something different for just a little while. All right, let's talk about our health changes that we're making. Here comes a vehicle up. I'm going to walk straight through the cemetery because I'm just not really wanting to chat with people today. Except for you guys. I don't know. That sounds kind of strange, I guess. Look at these old stones. 1956, 1967. That's not so old. Let's find some of the older stones. 1921. That one died as a child, a tiny one. 1912. 1903. 1905, 1915, and this one I wonder if it has even anything on it. It's not GTW. If it had a date on it, I can't read it now. $1918. I think some of the older stones are up front. I know that Hugh has a grandfather here from the Revolutionary, that had served in the Revolutionary War. Not sure where he's at. 1899 maybe? Yeah. So they're older graves, but the old ones, I guess, are up front here. I'm saying probably these very tiny little tombstones. And some of the grave markers may even be gone at this point in time. There's 1895. But anyway, back to the health issues. Yeah, Hugh and I were successful for about 5 days cutting the sugar completely out of our diet. And we dropped the ball, girls. We just did. So I'm back again to trying to figure out how I can just limit it, because I'm such a baby. I just really am. And I would, try to give some kind of an excuse for that, but I can't find one. But anyway, I can't even read these. I'm pretty certain that there's history down at the little church down there that probably has each one of these grave markers, the information on them in some kind of a historical document down there. This one's 1837. That's 1837 too, huh? But anyway, I'm thinking that this might make sense. We had at one point had decided that we were only going to have just a small dessert after supper, and as single serving. If I make a dessert, just make it a single serving size. And we did that years ago, and it worked out really well. You feel like you're completely finished after supper. Look at this big empty area in the cemetery. I would say that at one point there were some really old graves right here, because otherwise it doesn't make sense that it be surrounded by all these markers, these old markers, and then there just to be this big empty space. So I'd say there probably were markers in here that hopefully there's information about down at the church, but the markers just didn't survive. Over time they decay and just end up crumbling. But I used to make just a small dessert, like a single serving banana pudding for everybody for supper, or a little chocolate pudding, or cupcakes. Sometimes I keep cupcakes frozen and in the freezer. Obviously frozen in the freezer. I'm a little distracted. I'm sorry, girls. And then just when I pull them out, just put a little icing on them, or maybe some fresh strawberries and whipped cream. But that worked, and I really think I just want to go back to that and just have an occasional special dessert, one that you go out to, like the steakhouse, and they have those chocolate layer cakes that have like 7 layers of chocolate and the fudge, and they're really way too big for a single person, but they're super yummy. So that would be just, if you just, because Hugh and I don't go out to dinner like that more than once every 3 or 4 months. So if we limited it to something like that, I don't think it would be overload. But I have, in my defense, I have stopped drinking soda again. I didn't drink soda for 20 years, and it wasn't until just a couple of years back that I started drinking an occasional Pepsi, and then it became a Pepsi every time I went out somewhere to the store to pick up something, and then it became Pepsi's coming home in little cases, so I was drinking at least 2 every single day. Now that was not good. That was really not good. So I did give up the Pepsi, or the sodas, completely. And we've gone back to drinking tea. And the coolest thing, girls, I've always made our tea like in our coffee maker. And just using, if you've never made it in your coffee maker, if you use 6 of the family size tea bags, and I always cut mine open and empty them out into a coffee filter, and use your 12-cup marker on your coffee pot. That will make a gallon of tea. I found on Amazon, however, the gallon size bags that are they're just in one big pouch, and they're not that much more expensive than just buying the tea bags that you have to cut open and empty into the coffee filter. So it is super duper easy now just to grab a gallon size tea bag out, stick it in the coffee maker, and pour your water in, and you're good. So tea is now a very, very easy thing to make. Sometimes I make 1 or 2 gallons a day, depending on how much the boys. I just got a text from John, and he said they're on the way, so it'll be about 20 minutes. But just to see how much the boys, and it depends on the weather. If it's hot, they'll drink a whole lot of tea. But the good thing is that Hugh and I drink our tea unsweetened, and we don't use the sweetener at all. I just like the kind of slightly bitter taste of tea, and Hugh does too. So in that way, it's actually really good for you. And it's also, what was I going to say? I don't know. Something, right? But look at this day. Let me give you a little story about Jared. A couple years after he had gotten out of the military, I think our boys, come home angry because, there's all kinds of rhetoric out there in the general public. Some people just feel like these guys, that their service was pointless, that these wars were pointless. And this is my personal feeling on it. I don't ever think that their service is pointless, but I do feel like the politicians use our boys and girls like just little chess pawns. And for the most part, in just researching the history, I'm a history buff, girls, but researching the history of the last number of wars since World War II, we shouldn't have been involved in any of them. And if you do take the time to research, you'll find out that the consensus is, and the historical evidence shows, that there was a lot of fabricated reasons to go to war, and most of the time is because so many of our politicians are in the pockets of these great big companies that produce our war equipment, and it's a money thing. And I don't know what y'all feel, but I think it's a damn shame that our blue and white collar worker children are being used to line someone's pockets. And I wish that I had known the things that I know now before our children had gone into the military, because I would have done everything within my power to have discouraged it. Isn't that beautiful? But life is a journey. You learn things as you go. Some of the things you learn hurts your heart and changes your opinion on so many things that you had been convinced was right and true. I just don't know. But life is also lived in one direction. You can't back up and change anything. And I would if I could. So what do? Hopefully we learn. We learn from our mistakes. There's actually a chapter in Asheville that I have considered being a part of for a long time, because they're very involved, and it's called Veterans for Peace, and the chapter in Asheville is number 99. So I've been giving that some thought for a long while. I'm feeling like maybe perhaps I should be involved in trying to make sure that we never ever send another young man or woman to battle unless it is absolutely 1000% to protect the American citizenry here. Because our young men and women should not be used. And I'm not saying that that's not to make any kind of statement about the wars that are going on around the world. I won't do that. I won't go there. But I'm talking about as far as another Korea or another Vietnam or another Iraq or another Afghanistan. I never, ever, ever want to sit idly by and allow our young men and women to be used for a war that had no purpose and no value. I would encourage y'all, if you're interested in history, to go back and read an article. It's a big article in the New York Times. I think it was released in December of 2019. And the New York Times had been fighting for 3 years for this information through the Freedom of Information Act. And they finally acquired it. And it was the communications in the White House for the last since the beginning of the Afghanistan war. There's my Jared. In memory of our veterans. And this is all the veterans that are buried up here. But anyway, like I was saying, I'm going to go sit in the car for just a minute and get out of the sun. I forgot my hat. It's beginning to get hot out here. But this article gives information that over 453 or 58, I'm not going to get in there. Let me turn it around so I can look at you and talk to you. 453 or 58 briefings by our highest ranking military generals and all the commanders, with the presidents all the way back to George W. Every president, every one of these briefings, the generals and the commanders had made the statement that we don't know what our objective is. We don't understand why we're there. We're not accomplishing anything. Guys, this went on for 20 years with our military, high-ranking military officials telling all of the presidents that we don't see that what we're doing here, we don't understand our objective. Nothing is happening that we see as for the benefit of the United States. And yet we stayed, and we stayed, and we stayed. That should never have been. We should never have been there the first time. And I know that the encouragement circle is not political, and I'm not being political. I'm saying this across party lines. Every politician out there, we should hold their feet to the fire that this never happens again. We've lost beautiful, precious sons and daughters that we should never have lost. There was never a reason for that war or the Iraq war. There was not a reason. And we just sacrificed our children for the politicians and the munitions makers and these huge companies like Raytheon, and I can't even think of all of them that have specifically they build the military airplanes and the my mind went blank. Whatever. They build the equipment that's used, and there's billions and trillions. Actually, we spent over $1 trillion in DC. Look at Brown University. Brown University has the cost of war. If you Google that, the cost of war, it will tell you how much money and how many precious lives on both sides of this thing were lost. And it's absolutely mind-boggling and disheartening. But y'all, this will be my only talk on this topic for at least a year. I may go back there next year if I have anything to add. But I love y'all. I'm gonna wait. Jared's buddies should be here any moment. I'm gonna wait for them to get here and just give them a quick hug and send them on their way as they go, and stop off at the grave sites of their other friends. And I love y'all. Those of you that have lost a child, I send you my warmest hugs and heartfelt love this day. And those of you that have suffered grief of any kind this year with losing a parent, husband, wife, I understand. We understand each other. Let's just love on each other. I wish that I could give you all a hug in person, and that's not a possibility. But we are blessed with the ability of giving each other a hug online through this crazy media that we call YouTube, and I'm thankful for it. I really am. I think that y'all are fabulous. I've enjoyed our conversations, and I'm looking forward to many years of it as we just continue to walk each other home. Love you guys. Bye-bye.